And welcome back to Dice Down Gaming. This week, me and Dan, we're going to cover how to stay competitive on the tabletop, some of the obvious things and some of the less obvious things. How's everyone in the chat? How's your week been? What hobby have you done? What games have you played? Dan, how are you, mate? How's your week been?
Yeah, it's been good. Managed to play some War Machine yesterday at Steamroller. We'll talk about that later. But also today I've built some Trench Crusade. Attempted at building a trench. So that's my little bit of hobby. So yeah, no, it's been good. Really enjoyed it.
Nice, nice. I didn't get to play a game this week, sadly. I don't know, I played a game on War Table, like an online game. So I got to play one game of War Machine, and then I ran the Steamroller and I painted a model that I needed for the Welsh Masters. He's all finished, so that was quite a successful day. Just a bit of prerequisite for people sort of tuning in about me and Dan. You might be thinking, why are these two goons trying to tell me how to stay competitive? Me and Dan have previously done quite well for ourselves. We've played tabletop for quite a while. I've played since I was sort of like probably 12, and I'm an old man now. And Dan, how about you?
I started when I was 10 with Warhammer. Yeah, so
Yeah, so we both
going
played
back.
for a while. And we've previously done quite well in a system called Guild Ball. It's quite a similar sort of mindset to War Machine in the sense that it attracted a lot of competitive players. The rules were really tight, which I thought at the time drew a lot of people in because I think we were playing sort of games like GW games really, where the rules weren't so tight and the really tight system.
Interest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
What's
really
interesting is that they came from War Machine and Steamforged Games. Guild Ball was a game built from playing War Machine and going, okay, we've got some mechanics here. We'd like to put into a different game. And also when Mark III happened, and unfortunately PP might not have handled the shift over to Mark III as well as we'd have hoped. We then moved over to Guild Ball, and yeah, it's been interesting how we went with Guild Ball, and then obviously then Steamforged Games have bought War Machine back, and we've now gone to War Machine again.
Yeah, and now we're back to it. So in the game of Guild Ball, me and Dan were quite fortunate. We both attended. Did you attend more than one, or just the one?
Three WTCs in a row.
Right.
Yeah,
So I only
every
attended
year.
one of them.
Yeah,
So both of us have represented England at tabletop level. Both of us were quite fortunate. We got into the top 10 in the world in a system called Longshanks, which is like a ELO rating system. So in terms of our pedigree, we've played at the top level and we've committed to sort of achieving that level. And we're going to give our thoughts and tips on what it takes to get to that level, some of the obvious things and some of the less obvious things that come with that.
I think
Before
for people that,
you go.
sorry, just in case someone's coming here thinking, oh, I don't necessarily play too much War Machine, or what's this Guild Ball thing. I think it's fair to say that me and Aaron both come from that sort of competitive mindset where whichever game system we're trying to play, we're going there and we want to enjoy the experience, but we also want to be competitive. We don't want to get just blown out of the water. And when we have played other systems, it's I mean, I played Age of Sigmar when it first came out, and until 2023, it was competitive for that. And when I went to events, I'd often win or top three. And I know you're the same when you go to play other systems as well. So it's not like we were just got good at Guild Ball with those lessons we learned back originally in Mark II War Machine when we still won some steamrolls ourselves. We might not have done as well at the big national events. But those life lessons for competitive players we've certainly brought within other systems. I think that's something that's really important to sort of say, because it's not just Guild Ball, it's not just War Machine. These are things for these evergreen topic that if you're playing whatever system and you want to be a bit more competitive, we think there's some things you can do to help your game keep that standard.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be transferable across any system you play, and even to, like card games. I play a lot of Magic the Gathering. Dan, you play Flesh and Blood. They're
Yeah.
going to be sort of transferable to across those systems as well. So we went to a steamroll this weekend. I was running it, and Dan played in it. Dan, you went 3-0, so congratulations, bud. You did really well. Do you want to speak about maybe how your game 1 to 3 went? A little bit about that.
Yeah. So going into the event, I hadn't played War Machine for a couple of weeks. I was taking two new lists. They weren't new casters to me. I played them before. It was Marine and Syrafil, but the Syrafil list in particular was quite different to anything I've with her before. And I was a bit, if I'm honest, I was going there because I was wanting to use it as practice for the Welsh Masters. I knew that we had a couple of people coming that would give that competitive game, but also I wanted to be able to test sort of the ideas in sort of a more casual setting. At that stage, I was thinking that might be my last event before the Welsh Masters. So I went in that mindset of thinking, right, I want to do well. I want to stress test the list, but also I hadn't had experience with with both lists before I turned up on Saturday. So I was thinking, right, I need to try and get up, get ahead and thinking, right, what am I going to do and how's my game going to play out? So game one, I played against Conrad, who has the most beautiful Merc army that we saw at your last Steamroller, and his cricks are becoming just as good or if not better. Conrad's local to London, and he knows his onions. And the reason I won that game was because he timed out when I still had, I think, 13 or 14 minutes left. But the big thing in that game was even after deployment, I noticed there was a time disparity. And straight away, I thought, okay, so Crix is a pretty tricky matchup. I know I can get up on Scenario and I need to pressure that, but actually, time seems to be a difference here. So I then played for the clock and to really pressure him that way. I sent layers. So one thing he wasn't anticipating was me to be quite as aggressive. And he said at the end of the game, why did you just charge him forward? Why just run things forward? And I said, well, I saw that after turn one, there was 10 minutes difference. After turn two, I think there was 20 minutes difference. I wanted to keep on pressuring that. And yes, I might have sacrificed some models, but actually going, do you know what? I'm up on Scenario. I'm pressing. You've got to kill this layer, then you've got to kill this other layer, and then you're going to get to my sort of vulnerable pieces. There was a bit of a turn. There was a turn four, I think it was, where it swung back and he killed all my warjacks, and I was thinking like this. But by that stage, he had about 2 minutes left. So I knew that I just needed to take out some threat rate threats to my caster, and then put the clock back on him. He just didn't have time at all. And he couldn't go for assassination. He at the end of that turn, he'd have only been 1 point ahead of me. I was ahead the whole rest of the game. And yeah, so that's I think that taking that competitive mindset of thinking, okay, straight away, if you see a victory condition, go for it. And in War Machine, not just sticking to that assassination, attrition, or scenario, also thinking clock is something that you need to be conscious of.
So you'd say like from your turn one, even post your deployment, or was it post turn one that you thought you were ahead on clock? Just deployment.
Straight away from deployment. So I was playing Cyrophil, a list I hadn't played before. I'd used Cyrophil, I'd used all the elements of it, but never together in that list and that makeup. And even after deployment, I straight away could sense that Conrad was going to be slow, meticulous, precise, great qualities, but he was significantly slower straight away from deployment. And because he made me go first, I knew my first turn would be pretty good because I could just run up and he wouldn't be able to get me. Or if he did try to shoot me, which he did choose to shoot me, I had shield guards, I had high armor, I had things in cover, and all those things. And yeah, so straight away from deployment, but then after turn one, it became even more obvious. I was like, right, okay, I've got to really send this in. And going first as well allowed me to have that reaction. Because I knew that he'd obviously had to try and consider the scenario, because if he doesn't score, which he didn't score heavily on his turn two, which is the first scoring turn, and I scored, well, I'm up on scenario. My positioning is pretty good in itself. That's another thing.
I suppose that's a good point also, because a lot of the games now, I know 40k has, I say recently, but it's probably been a few years now or even longer, introduced the clock. And I know Sigmar is now, I think the WTC is played on the clock. So getting used to identifying, maybe not even games, just matchups where you think there might be slower before you've even deployed. Having that in the back of your mind is probably quite important in the current sort of gaming state.
I think also we spoke about it when we talked about being a good player and being a good opponent. My first Age of Sigmar event, after playing War Machine for years and playing Guild Ball, went to Age of Sigmar, and my first tournament I deployed. So my opponent deployed, I deployed. My opponent had his first turn, I had my first turn. My opponent then had his second turn, didn't finish his second turn. Round got called, killed one more model than me, and because of that time they didn't have clock. There was such disparity. I probably spent 15 minutes of my whole round time. He spent the rest of it, and he was like, "Oh," I shook my hands like, "Yeah, well, I win," because he said he win was because he killed one more model, because I hadn't even got a chance to have my turn too. And I think for me, clock, we spoke about this before, clock is not just about a win condition, it's also that balance and quality of time. And that's really important, because it's not just about playing, it's also valuing other people's time. And you mentioned this before, time is valuable. And yeah, but in a competitive sense, if you've got that clock, actually thinking time's also a win condition, time's also a resource to think of. And if your opponent uses it better than you might lose, and if you use it better than your opponent, you might win.
And I think, yeah, maybe also sometimes you can think of it as an out, right? So say your opponent has a killer turn two, they remove a lot of stuff and they get on a scenario, but suddenly they're 20 minutes behind you on the clock. If you've got enough to play fast and try and drag out their turn and stay in the game, it might also be sort of a viable win condition even when you're not ahead.
And I think it's also something really hard, because we've got so many reps in War Machine in particular, having played in Mark II, that we don't necessarily consider how we do things very fast without thinking about it. For example, we are planning pretty much our whole turn in our opponent's turn. We are considering which order of activations we're going to need to do well before that clock's clicked over to us. But the biggest thing is that deployment and turn one, the time you save then is so much more valuable later on. And in all three of my games, I noticed that I was able to speed run deployment and turn one compared to my opponents.
Cool. So on to game two.
So game two was a lesson to Den. Den's one of our local players. He is a gentleman and a scholar. He won his first game after he said in the week before that he'd lost 15 games in a row, and he was, really struck. He was getting a bit despondent. Felt really challenging. Won his first game, got me round two, and unfortunately, it was a lesson for him on positioning. Positioning is huge, and I think for staying competitive in any game system, understanding the positioning, staying out of threat ranges, intentionally staying out of some threat ranges, and then if you do go in, have an intent to go in. So in my first game, I intended to go in and jam up, because I wanted to cause those layers to then win on scenario or time. Whereas Den mispositioned almost his entire army. So I went first and just raced up. He went first and moved up too far, to within every charge range basically, and I then said, right, turn two, and he didn't pop his feet with Athena as well. So I had an option. I identified the issue as he hasn't got his feet up, so this is my chance to alpha him. I can alpha him because I can get nearly every one of my units in a good position. I can also get up on scenario. I'm going first, and also I can pop my feet to be a bit more defensive as well. And I did that, and I think you came over went maybe at the start or the end. I can't remember when you came over, and it was horrific. I killed a whole unit on my whole parade unit of one unit of cavs, and then moved that same cav unit repositioned to right to the flank, so then he wouldn't be able to get back on them. I was on every scenario point. I popped my feet so he couldn't move closer without taking damage or getting pushed back. I did a huge amount of damage to the general, I believe it was. I killed nearly the whole unit on the other side. I shot it was the best turn of War Machine I have ever played since Mark II. It was just, but I said to him, like, if you popped your feet, that doesn't happen. If you'd have positioned a little bit better, that doesn't happen. But the biggest thing there was positioning, and also importantly for me, when you think about that competitive mindset, was, and I found that particularly when I played Conquest, Last Argument Kings, was that thinking, okay, there's the order of activations, but also considering, right, if that model might be in, but that model's then got to go there, stopping the other person's model going in another position. So I ended up positioning in a place where he couldn't get up on scenario, he couldn't score scenario, he couldn't contest the scenarios. So I won on scenario his end of turn two. So that was the first score I had, and that was probably after 25 minutes, maybe half an hour.
Uh,
So
I,
positioning is a big issue there.
I suppose that one's a lesson in terms of some games you do need to give up a little bit of time in terms of making sure you make the choice. So Den could have either stayed out of your threat, which, to be fair, without sort of Tyrus, it was a respectable threat, but I don't think he would have been too penned in by just staying a bit further back. Um,
Especially when you
yeah, or he could have, decided to try and sort of bait you into coming into you with the feet, and hope that you came in and had a poor turn and he could clap back really
Yeah.
hard. Uh, that might be a bit also, to be fair, a bit of game knowledge in terms of how hard your opponent can swing. Maybe he wasn't expecting to lose so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's game two, and that was yeah, pretty much after your game two. I looked at turn two and I thought, yeah, that's pretty much game. He's there. You removed so much that I think you were playing basically 100 points to about 40 points left on the table. So if you were playing 2K of Sigma, you would have lifted like 1,200 points essentially. So it was a killer turn, and then on to round three.
So round three played against Dave with is it not Kairos, no, Kryrax, the Shadow Flame Shard Centaur guy. I can't remember.
Kyrax, yeah.
It is Kyrax, yeah. So having played that matchup a lot when I've used Tyrus, because Tyrus can out-threaten Kyrax, and when we talked about your last Steamroller, when I won against Sherwin, and he was playing Kyrax, I knew that I could out for him. This is a game that I called the Cold War for the first three turns because we had the same threat range and we just stayed out. The difference being I went second in that game, so I got up on scenario. I scored scenario first and contested, and meant that he didn't because he stayed out. I managed to get the cash. We were playing trench warfare, and then he was really down on the clock. I was killing stuff. I went in first and managed to kill a lot, fair amount. Sorry, I got some damage out onto Kyrax as well, and then he hit me back. But because of my feet and because of my positioning, he was also really down on time. So he was racing and trying to get things done. It ended up going back to me with he had a minute left, I think it was. I had about 7 minutes at that stage, and I know lots of people. And he said, "Dan, just play it out, put the clock back on me, and I want a timeout." I know that you and some other people watching were thinking that's all I need to do, but because and this is something that I shouldn't have done. It's not something I should have done, but it's something I wanted to do. Was I'd won a game already on clock. I'd won a game on scenario. I wanted to win one on assassination, and because I could see the assassination was there, I then went through the processes of right. I'm going to try and do leave myself in a position where I'm not going to die. Like I shouldn't be assassinated back within under a minute, but I'm also going to really threaten and try and get the assassination. And thankfully, after several moving and getting a unit of cats into Kyrax again after killing a transfer target, he went down on the second cat swing. So I managed to take the assassination. I think by that stage, because I started on about 7 minutes, I got down to about 4 minutes. But he still, if he had survived, he'd have had less, I think a minute or even less to activate his whole army and try and assassinate me. He wouldn't have scored, wouldn't have won on that turn either, I don't believe. But it was really interesting as a matchup. It was definitely the most difficult game because I was up on clock for the majority of it, because I know what Kyrax can do, and you can be up on clock, but if once he gets a good feet turn, he can take off all my army, and then he's scoring multiple times. Yeah, so I think it was definitely a game where I could have easily lost and Dave could have easily won. I don't think there was any huge mispositions from him. I think that the clock did have an impact potentially, but also he had to take time to stay out of threat. But getting the assassination was yeah, it was part of the game plan because Kyrex has to move forward, whereas Syrafil can move forward and go backwards because once that feat's gone, you don't need to stay sort of up in their face. But I'm interested to see what your perspective on that last game was because obviously I was playing it; it was quite intense. At one stage, we had a lovely local, very friendly, but trying to ask Dave questions when he had like less than 3 minutes left, and I was like, please, like to let Dave play us out. I don't want to lose. I don't want him to lose on clock because someone's trying to be friendly and have a chat with him. So I'm interested what your perspective was.
Yeah, absolutely. So a few things. First of all, Camo says morning in the chat. I assume you must be in like Oz or somewhere for it me morning. In the UK, we're like 10 to 8.
So it's not by chance Cam that used to play Guild Ball. What was his surname? Does loads of triathlons as well. And he's like, it might not be this. It might be some completely different person.
Well,
If
thanks
it
for
is you,
joining
Cam,
this, Camo. And if you are the legendary Australian Guild Ball player, thanks for joining us. Tom, Huggy, hey, thanks for coming in, Tom. Dan, try harding again. Unfortunately, he's just naturally very good. I don't think he has to try that hard. which is frustrating. And lastly, sorry, when I watched back the video last week with me, you, and Jamie, Dan, I noticed that I was quite a bit louder than the rest. If you guys could let me know if I'm equivalent level to Dan, that would be really helpful. Val of Darkness 000. What's up? What's up, buddy? Thanks for joining him. So, okay, perspective on game three. So yeah, I think it was a really interesting game because you both threatened a static 13. Kyrex could make that 15 if he killed a model with Alpha Hunter, but you'd have to kill a model to do that, so it's basically 13. I said to Dave, you need to swap out a Drakian and throw in a Vipex with Hunter's Mark ASAP into that list to make that 15.
I thought that too.
Right, yeah. But in terms of sort of positioning, it was really interesting. I think the Shades gave him a bit of upper hand because they were a bit like they threatened a bit further than, and Ricochet is a killer, dude.
Yep.
Bluffkin. Oh look, it's the second best FAB Flesh and Blood. Look at that knowledge. Player in Hertfordshire. I think that's Steve. Yo, Steve. So yeah, so really interesting because you were both like doing a lot of I'm going to place this 13-inch stick and stay out of you, and then Dave would go and he would place his 13-inch stick and stay out of you. So there was a lot of that. Like you said, so Dave chose to go first, and I think maybe no, you gave him first.
Oh no! Actually, no. You're right. Dave did choose to go first because then I chose sides, and I chose the side that was better for me and worse for him.
Yeah, I thought so. So I'm not sure if maybe that was a bit of knowledge choice, right? Because when you're at static threat, you are never gonna go, oh, on my turn one, I'll run into 13 of you. So and then you're gonna have the choice of contesting stuff or not. Dave too. So if Dave does contest stuff on turn 2. You're going to get almost the first hit because you're not going to give him anything at turn 1. And you've got quite a lot of things like Skyfell spray, the shots from the Eidolons, Israfel spray. You've got a few things if you contest with one cheap unit, you're going to scalpel them off and you're probably going to score. So that was interesting. I think in hindsight, maybe Dave would have given you turn 1. And then what you would contested with on your turn 2, then maybe Dave can get a bit before you start engaging. It was quite funny because it was 3 turns of eating the clock and not playing much, and then 2 turns of Dave had like 15 minutes left and was trying to play his whole game in the time left on the clock. So I think it was just a bit of sort of resource management from both of you. I know you were ahead on clock again. And I think that comes back to sort of army knowledge because, again, Dave, he's quite new-ish to Shadow Flame Shard. He's dropped into it for the Welsh Masters. And I think that comes back to sort of practice, which we're gonna get onto sort of like as a topic for competitive play. Because I think, if the game had gone on maybe 10 more minutes, okay, and you got the assassination, so maybe not. But if Dave had a bit more time to position himself, without rushing, maybe he could eventually got the win. So really, really, I think high level game. There weren't any sort of mistakes, I'd say. I think when you get to the point of turn 2 and things start after contesting, it naturally gets a bit scrappy, right? Because you've got to start killing stuff and contesting stuff, and the game just starts being played then. But really clean game from both of you. I think, yeah, it was tricky because, John isn't a competitive guy at all. He's the local guy who was around the table. He's not competitive. He's super like a British eccentric jolly guy, and Dave, and he was sort of saying to Dave, oh wow, this is really close. Oh wow, you've taken this in your list. Dave sort of, by the looks of it on his face, he was quite happy and he sort of realised he's got 1 minute 30 left and it was probably over. But if it was like 3 minutes left and you were both for 3 minutes left, I would have asked everyone, even Comrade, just to step back and not even like be near the table. Because even I think for some people, even watching being played is a big distraction to their game. But no, it was a really super great game. 2 sort of high level players playing really well, and the clock really made a difference in the end. Steve, it is Steve. Thanks for joining us, Steve. Camo, 5 a.m. in Oz. Crikey, mate. I had to do one. Right, so yeah, thanks for joining us from Oz, Camo. You never played Guild Ball. It's not the legendary Guild Ball player.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'm sure you're still
friendly. An equally great guy, right? Excellent.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're going to talk about a few things now which Also, congratulations, Dan. Let's get let's go Dan. A W in the chat for Dan. 3-0. I think you're 9-0 in Mark 4 Steamrollers now. What a guy.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm.
No. Actually, do you know what? I'm 11-1 because
Oh,
I lost
it's all scuffed.
final to Sherwin back in January.
Ah, all scuffed. Awful record. I'm a massive 4-2 because I've lost both my finals like an idiot.
No, it's fun, mate. Read it. So one part of being competitive is reading cards
Yeah.
and making sure you understand
Also,
feats.
like listening when someone tells you what it does. That really helps. Uh, awesome. So, right, we're going to go through four things really. We've got mindset, practice, travel costs,
Yeah,
and sort of chasing the meta slash cost associated with that.
yeah.
Then we're going to look at the hobby in the Dice Down Discord because we've not been able to do that the last few times. We've had people on and we've had to stick to a certain schedule. And I didn't want to sort of like say to them, "Oh, you've got to stay around for 10 minutes while I look at this." So we're going to go through the hobby in the Discord as well because they've got loads of posts in there, which is really cool.
Nice.
So the first thing really is mindset, which might sound a bit obvious that, you might need to have the right mindset. But what I'm more really thinking of is that the sort of mental prep that if you're going to decide that you want to play competitive, that you're going to sort of make that decision and lock in on a few things. First of all, I would say faction hopping slash reps in one thing. I don't know how you feel, Dan, but I think if, the best way to do something is pick something that is at a decent level in the meta. You want to playing something strong because you want to go compete, and then grind the hell out of it until it becomes second nature.
I'm a big fan of building a list, painting a list, playing the list, and just playing it loads. So I played Sorrowful 3 times because I hadn't played it. So I played it 3 times yesterday, and make a bit. So I'm the same with sort of every system, whether it was a Song of Ice and Fire, whether it was AOS, whether it was 40k, whatever. You build the list. Don't be that if you're playing whatever game system you're playing. Don't be the guy that changes your list every week for your club or every time you're playing a different person. And definitely don't be the guy or girl who asks for their opponent's list and then texts for it. That is not going to help you be a competitive player. It's not going to help you sort of prepare because if we go back to what makes a good player and what makes what you should be doing in the community, if you listen back to that episode, it's the same thing for competitive players. Just competitive players mindset needs to be more of I'm going to hone those skills and, like you say, focus on a list and focus on the learning from it, not just the experience of having fun, but also, okay, if I've lost, why have I lost? What's that reason for it? Why, if I've won, don't just like pat yourself back. Okay, well, what could I have done better? And have that growth mindset we say in education.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot to be said about playing the hard matchups, right? It's really easy if you like I don't know, let's give me an example. I know Sherwin, just pure example, he's gonna play Chimerax, right? He's on Shadow Flame Shard. I know he's probably got Cyrus and Kyrax, right? So maybe before the game I'll be like, oh, you know what, my list doesn't really suit this pairing, so I'm just gonna quickly tweak it on the app before I go play Sherwin and make my life easier, right? No. Play your list that you want to play and play them into all the really rough, hard matchups. You're going to get an experience. Is it actually hard? It might not be that bad, right? You might, on paper, or the forums, or a Discord tells you it's unwinnable and you can't play it. Go play it. It might not be that bad. But secondly, okay, you might confirm that it's really bad. And you know that when you're doing your list pairings in Sigma or War Machine or sort of that, you know you're going to try and dodge it. If you can't dodge it, you can try maybe thinking of some contingency plans for the scenario, for example. And thirdly, you're going to get practice into it, right? So say you can't dodge it. Say you're playing 40k and Necrons, they're a really really poor matchup into Dark Angels, right? The more you play that, the more it's going to be less of a bad matchup.
And I think also,
You go.
like you said, having that attitude of I'm going to play it, and no matter what I'm facing, that's also huge, especially in those games where War Machine's quite unique in the fact that it's got a 2-list pairing. In those games where you've got one list, whether it's like I said, playing Conquest and being like, this is the list that I'm going to practice for this event. If you can find out scenarios and you might adapt your list slightly that way, that okay, not during casual night, but I'm going to write this general list that's going to do this. I've got some intended outcomes that I want it to do. I want it to ask these questions, answer these. I know where I'm going to position this on deployment. Practicing that, because the time you take away from the table to get that list ready and to think about it. That mindset can also help you when you're on the table, and it's even more prevalent. And I find it fascinating, having not played 40k for a while now. The fact that I can remember, like say, building one list, going right. Here's my Necrons. This is my list that I'm going to be taking and playing every week at the club, unless something new comes out. But I'm just playing this. But again, when you said to someone, when you organise a game, I'm playing Necrons. I go, okay, right. I'm going to build. Oh, this is my list to face Necrons. That's not going to help you. And also, I don't necessarily think it's going to be make the win as worthwhile, because if you win because you've teched perfectly against it, you know, is that going to make you feel great? Whereas, like you said, if you manage to play that bad matchup and you do get the win, or even if it's close, and that could be in any game system, that's that feeling of self-worth and thinking, actually, you know what, I've actually challenged myself. It was something I had to show resilience, and I had to really work hard for it. And actually, it's not just the learning from that, but you know that actually in that situation you can keep calm, not tilt. We'll talk about mindset of tilting, and getting in your head and all the rest of it, and analysis paralysis. I think it's really worthwhile to just play your game.
Absolutely, and I think what you can end up doing also is chasing your tail, right? So I think a good example for me is like I've got two lists, or I've got a list, and I know I'm playing an army which has a rule, and I've got an answer in it in my faction that I could drop into my list and play it, right? So I'm gonna play this list. I'm playing Dave. Oh, I know Dave plays this army. I'm gonna quickly swap these two things out and drop in the tech that I have to play against this list. You know, for example, in War Machine specifically, I've got solos that do eyeless sight. If I play against Gravediggers, I might drop two of them in, so when they drop their clouds, I can see through their clouds. Great, right? So you do that, and then next week you're playing Bob, and Bob's playing a different army, and you need a new tool for this, right? So you take out those things you added in, and you drop in your two new tools because he's got X rule that you want to play against. When you're in sort of like the tournament setting, you're gonna have to play a matchup without them tools because you can't tinker your list every game. So you need to get into those reps of, you know, make a decision, look at the meta. This army is this percent of the meta, right? I'm going to tech for that army, great. So there are armies that you haven't teched for. Now go play those matchups that you haven't put the tech in to play against those, and you'll see how bad it is, and you'll learn how to deal with it in different ways.
I think also don't necessarily, like you mentioned, don't trust the internet. When I was playing Song of Ice, and, no, sorry, Age of Sigmar, back when I played Zeech when they first came out back in the Age of Sigmar, like original sort of run version, and everyone was running the Skyfires. Everyone was saying you just run Zangor Skyfires; they are the best shooting, and you take demons. What people hadn't realised is actually if you I took the Zangor warriors because I took a big Death Star of 30 of them, and by the time I got multiple buffs on them, I won three events thing in a row where it was like people just like weren't prepared for the fact that they hadn't seen this thing and it wasn't being spoken on the internet. The same with Star Wars Legion. So for a long time people thought that you had to take Jedi and that Jedi were essential. On my clones list, I pretty much don't run a Jedi. I've never run a Jedi at an event. And I can remember one event at Wayland Games where the guy beforehand was saying to me, the organizer, like, why run this commander's list? Oh, there's no way. I just don't think it's very good. I just don't understand what you're doing. A final round when I'm undefeated and I win that final round, he's like, oh, actually, I can see it's worth now. So please don't just trust the internet for giving you a list idea. That can be the same for card games as well. Like I say, play your game, get your reps in. If you know your matchup's better than your opponent, you're likely to win. And that also goes with legacy armies for people that are playing War Machine, because I don't play them very often. I don't know if you've played very often. They catch people out.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, don't get me wrong, we're not trying to say that the internet is conspiracy and it's wrong. If something is winning 60% of the meta, we agree that it's a good list. What we're saying is if you go on a forum and you ask, how do Beasts of Chaos go into Dwarves, and they say it's unplayable, walk away from the table, we're saying maybe go play it yourself before you draw that conclusion, do a bit of self-thinking and critical thinking yourself, and play the game yourself, because the best experience is going to be you doing it. Veil of Darkness, changing list a lot is something I need to taper. Yeah, well, I think it would improve your overall game by not doing it. You crack on, Dan.
Also, I think when you go to the table, don't be defeated before you roll dice. I think that's one massive thing with mindset. The amount of times where people go, "Oh, I've got this matchup," or "Oh, I've got this person," "Oh, I'm facing this," and especially when you go to sort of those sort of higher tier events, playing in the World Team Championship. So it's a team event where you can compare up players. The amount of times where people just go, oh, well, I can't win this match, I'm playing this. Well, you've already lost. If you're mentally gone, your opponent's already won. You're going to be making bad decisions. You're not going to be positioning well. You're going to be down on time. You're not going to be playing your own game. You're just going to try and react to everything they do. See, I think that's another thing that, turn up to play and be engaged with it and be present in that actual game rather than what the internet said about it on Discord or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. We've all got bad matchups, and you do some, 40k Sigma tabletop. You go into a game, you think, right, okay, I'm already maybe a bit behind because you've got an advantage on me in these elements. But most of the time, if we're playing a comp game now, you're playing on some sort of clock. Let's look at that, using that as a resource. You're playing some sort of scenario. Let's look at how we can maybe try and negate the strong elements of our opponent's list by playing to the scenario.
Yep.
And like you say, let's not get to the table thinking I've already lost, because if you do that, you probably have already lost. But let's get to the table thinking, how am I going to overcome the challenge? And if you do lose and if you've done your best, then well, fair play. You can't win all of your games. But you don't want to, as exactly Dan said, you don't want to lose before you've started the game.
Yeah. I think that related to that point moves us on to our next bit about practice. Practice those scenarios, especially if you've got the mission pack that's come out that year, or the General's Handbook, or Steamroller, whatever it is. Know what you need to do. Know what your list does. Read the cards. Practice. Think about it. Practice those scenarios. So think about, okay, where if I had to deploy, where can I practice it? Deployment is something everybody can practice on their own. Some people might say it's incredibly sad, but if you wanted to, you could spend just half an hour of your evening setting up your army in a deployment way. Then move your terrain around, set it up again. Move it around, set it up again. Those little reps can really make a difference. Not necessarily, I think in War Machine it's a bit different, but certainly playing those larger scale game systems where deployment can really be the be all and end all, particularly in those games where you can really alpha strike from range. Definitely practice, and also value your practice. Don't just hot swap to different lists. Talk about when you're practicing that your opponent can be there to have a fun time and to just be very casual. That's perfectly okay. But you might want to hold the standards of saying, I'm not going to accept a cocked dice when I roll it. I'm going to make sure if I make a mistake, I'm not going to take back because I need to remember it for next time. I'm going to try and communicate and make it very clear because I'm practicing to be the best opponent I can be, but the best person to play with. But also, I'm trying to keep myself to that high standards. And also not being a dick with it. If you're practicing and you're against your mate in your kitchen table, it's okay if your mate goes, I've got to activate this, it's meant to this. Don't be the guy in casual practice games that says, no, you can't do that. You want to have a better experience. You want to have a competitive game. That should be the focus, not, you forgot this one thing, which you clearly were going to do. And I think that's really important for practicing. But what do you think is important to practice? Because obviously, I feel like you've recently had a lot more practice. You've played on War Table. How have you found that sort of element of game?
Yeah, for sure. So the last thing I might say quickly, I'd say, is regards to staying mentally strong for a game. We've all had a bad turn too. Like I've got this plan. This is going to go in this. Mathematically, it should kill this. Great. You try and execute your plan. You roll below average. It doesn't work. I've seen some people sort of try and do that to me. Because they've had everyone makes a plan, and it doesn't go too well. And I feel like they've all almost lost the game turn two because mentally they're like, oh well, I should have rolled a 7. I should have rolled 7s on average. I rolled loads of 5s. I didn't kill this, so game over. And sort of like the mentality before you start the game. If you do that on turn 2 and you sort of mentally you go and your critical thinking goes and your sort of planning goes, well, you have sort of lost the game turn 2 then because you've sort of given up that element of the game. So I think accepting sometimes that if things aren't going to go great, but rolling with that and just move on. I've got this key spell, it misses. Rather than stew for a few minutes and be like, well, if that went off, I could have done this and that. Just move on. Go to the next thing. And I feel sometimes people beat themselves, by getting frustrated about those sort of things.
Yeah, and having that moment to just take a breath. Don't take too long on it, but just go, right, okay. One way we spoke about being a good sport and being a good player is cracking a joke then that's self-deprecating is far better than you go, for fuck's sake, I'd have won if that dice hadn't happened. Oh, you got lucky. Give your opponent some credit. you know, you it happens. You know, it's something you go. We're rolling dice. We love the dice because they can spike. We hate the dice when they go low. We only remember the fails. We don't remember all those successes when it massively went over. But yeah, I think you're spot on. But just go and actually jump up, move on, take a breath. Let's carry on because tilting, I think, is the biggest difference between those sort of more casual players and those ones that are playing competitively and actually are succeeding competitively. Because there's a lot of people that say they're competitive players that throw a tantrum turn one or turn two when the dice roll doesn't go, or if they've mispositioned one model.
Yeah, and also I'll be real with you. There's nothing more annoying than playing against someone when every turn they're saying, "Oh, my dice are shit." It's like, yeah, get over it, man. Like we've all had crap dice. Like just move on. Right? Yeah. So, but on to practice. Sorry, because you made a great segue and I went backwards. So I think specific to not specific to War Machine. Sorry, but in this sort of current game where a lot of people are playing on clock because people realise that we want people to have equal game time at a competitive event. What it will do is the reps you get in your army, which goes back to sort of sticking to one, I'd say, army. Okay, tweaking your list here and there as you develop it and play against more of the meta makes sense. But sticking with your one army slash faction, you're going to get more reps in terms of muscle memory. Like if someone's asking you what toughness you are, how far do you move, what ballistic skill are you, in War Machine, what defense are you. If you have to bring up the app or go for a codex to do that, it's gonna really quickly eat your time. But then secondly, when you're trying to make a choice in terms of what am I going to do this turn, rather than sort of having to go, oh, this guy, he's ballistic skill 3 or he's match 7, and that guy's this defense, and how's that going to hit? Having to do that quickly, okay, I know he's match 7, I know they're 14, I know I need 7s, great, he can commit to there. That is going to speed up your play really, really a lot, and that's going to be a massive benefit.
I
Uh,
think that on
you go.
just quickly, so Steve, I don't know if he's still on the chat. So Steve's getting used to having been quite used to war games. He's finding that dice maths and quickly doing it. We were able to rapidly recall numbers that needed and able to understand whether we need to boost or not because we've had years of experience. But it's interesting someone new coming to it. Actually, that's something that it can take a while. It feels like it can take a few reps, but actually once it clicks, it just changes your game because the analysis paralysis that you have or the cognitive load of thinking, oh, Matt, what? Defense what, armor what, power what, that goes, then suddenly you can focus on positioning and games and all the rest of it.
Yeah. So then, more practicing in terms of sort of scenario. I think all the comp games these days, Sigma, 40k, Heritage not really comp, but Sigma, 40k, War Machine, you're all going to play some sort of scenario. They're all going to have some sort of rules on how you score that scenario. There's going to be different scenarios in terms of where your objectives are and what rules they do. And knowing how your list plays each scenario, but also how your list plays each scenario when playing an opponent's list. If you're playing a really aggressive list, then you might want to play the scenario differently to when you're playing a really aggressive list yourself against a defensive list, etc. And I think most of the time, in maybe War Machine specifically, but I think Sigma and 40k, there's no like assassinate me and win. So you're only winning through the scenario. So it's almost the most key thing to have reps in is that scenario packet.
Yeah, and but with those games, while you can only win on scenario, there might be that element of you need to get up on attrition to win on scenario. But again, just having that conscious mindset about it when you're practicing your games, like we said before, time's valuable. If you've only got one game a week or one game a fortnight, as someone that wants to be competitive, that doesn't mean you need to turn up and be a rule shark or be a bit of I'm saying this Nazi about it because when someone's a bit sort of conscious about things, actually just be there like I want to get the most out of this game. I want to make sure that I'm better after this game than I was before. I think that's a key part of practicing as well.
Yeah, and I'd say don't be afraid to re-rack games, right? If you've only got
Yeah,
4 hours to play, you've got one evening a week, and you have about say 3 hours in that session to play a game, and say you are practicing hard matchups, whatever, and you get to a position where you feel like you've lost in an hour or you have lost. Let's like go back to a board state where it's still fairly even, and let's try and play out and talk to your opponent and say, what do you think I could have done differently? I think
yeah,
a lot of the time you can get some great perspective from your opponent in terms of they might have been thinking, oh well, I would have moved that there because that would have made it really hard for me. And you're not going to know that because you didn't do it. But your opponent's going to can give
Yeah.
you a lot of good information in terms of where you could have put things to make their life difficult.
Certainly, and have that those conversations, and also being honest. I mean, often when playing, particularly our local Dave, the amount of times Dave has assassinated me turn two with his cricks is ridiculous. So the amount of times I get to the end of my turn, and it's like, Dave, are you going to kill me? And he's like, I'm going to try. Or he's like, okay, no, because if he's going to try, we talk about it. Sometimes you can spend just 3 minutes talking about it, going, you know what? Yeah, I think you're going to kill me. Let's re-rack, let's reposition. Um, that's.
Steve said the maths does scare me. I do prefer Warhammer dice though, knowing to hit in fives or something. So right, so if you're like ballistic skill 5 or ballistic skill uh, 2, you would hit on fives. War Machine I suppose is a bit more of you have to apply the formula every time you do a hit or damage roll rather than just reading a stat. So that's fair enough.
Yeah.
And I think another thing in practice, so we'll move to sort of the more. I think some of the things that people don't.
Just
Yeah, the logistical bit. But another thing with practice is play against all the different things, right? Play against the meta stuff, but try and play against the off meta stuff as well. Because if you are gonna go want to win, say, a national event, so like or like you attend a world team championship, or you're gonna attend sort of like an international event per se. There's going to be people there that play things outside of your meta, and I certainly as we've seen, Dan, across countries, people really value different things differently, right? So if you go to like America, I'm sure. Let's use Sigma as an example. If you look at the UK scene for Sigma, and then go to America and look at their top list, they are very different in terms of what they think is top of their meta. So I think playing things that is off meta is really important.
and including that, playing new players. So I would say, while a competitive player might not feel they can get much out of someone that's not played the game much, I would say I've learnt a lot more in my games with Steve, who's brand new to wargaming, let alone War Machine, and those lessons have stood me in good stead, especially because he's playing casters that I've not had too much experience with, and actually talking it through how Sepsira can feat and assassinate someone has made it so much easier for me to understand. Okay, this is the threat that I can come up against, and sort of a small nuance as well. So, as you just saying you're a competitive player doesn't mean you need to go and club seals or go and steal people's cookies or lunch bucket money or whatever. Actually take that time, still have that mindset, but think, what can you learn from it? How can you help them get up to your stand as well? Because if everyone's playing at that really high level, you keep on improving. So yeah, I think that's spot on. Should we move on to logistics?
Yeah, yeah. There's a saying which I thought I would really cleverly put in here, but I don't really know how it goes. A rising tide raises all boats. Is that the saying?
Yes. Yeah, that's
Wow, I'm essentially like Aristotle.
yeah. I mean, that's it.
Massive.
I think.
Yeah, and like you say, if everyone starts playing better and you're playing against a local meta which is developing in the player skill, they're just going to push you along, and you create this sort of scene where everyone pushes each other along, and you're all better for it. So yeah,
Den saw that at the weekend, where having been beaten, they're finding it quite challenging in our local meta. Won 2 of his 3 games at the weekend, and he was like, "Oh, what games I won, I just knew what I could do. I knew what I was doing more than my opponent," which obviously comes into it.
and we've
So,
seen him also develop his list as well, which is really cool. He's stuck with the same warcaster, but he's sort of cut things in and out. But same with the same faction, stayed with the same leader model, so sort of same HQ choice for Sigma. But he's sort of refined his list, refined his faction, played against lots of different army types, and he's really grown as a player from from even from when I first known him to now.
yeah, certainly. So you start with travel costs, because I think one thing that not necessarily just travel, but just the cost of being competitive. Whether it's you're trying to buy a new deck in a card game, or whether you've got to get your models before you play them and everything. I think there are some costs, and I think that one aspect that isn't necessarily thought of is that being a competitive player generally does mean it will cost you more to play the game, because you're going to want to buy that new model, you're going to want to get those new rules, you're going to want to get that new codex or whatever it's going to be. So that's one thing to think about. What do you think about costs generally?
Yeah, I think that there's 2 things really, and I think we certainly saw it peak Guild Ball. There's 2 things really. One is travel costs, and 2 is sort of chasing the meta, which is different in different games. But we'll start with travel costs. So typically for a World Team Championship, where you've got to be selected for a team, they're going to want you to attend a few international and say national events. For us locally, if we take sort of maybe Welsh Masters as an example, or War Manchester as an example, we probably have to go there Friday, stay there Saturday, come home. Typically for us in the south of the UK, the big events aren't here, I would say.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we typically have to drive either to the north or to Wales, or sometimes maybe
Yeah.
the big team event this weekend was in Birmingham, so that would
I
be
mean,
slightly closer, like 3 hours. Um,
yeah.
I know people in America are probably thinking that this is very light, because I know in America they drive like 2 hours for a 1 day event without thinking about it. So in the
Yeah.
UK,
Yeah. That's next door to them. Yeah.
yeah. But so for example, let's look at Welsh. It's about £200 for a hotel in the UK for a 2 day event. Travel costs, petrol is probably going to be about 100 there and back, maybe 50, £60 for your ticket, and then maybe your food will be about £100 ish.
Yeah.
For dinner both nights and some drinks during the day.
Drinks, snacks. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're basically at £500 for a 2 day tournament. That's in the UK. If you have to fly maybe to like Belgium Masters is really popular. I mean, like across all systems, you might have to get a flight there and back. Then your hotel and all that. If you want to do that 4 times a year, for example, normally I'd say if you want to get onto an international team, you might want to do well at 4 international events. You're about £2,000 for your travel costs for that year.
I'm sure that's the same for other systems if they want to go to sort of Gen Con, AdeptCon, Las Vegas Open, all those sort of things. Or even in Australia, the cost of going to BrizCons or whatever you need to go to, a CanCon, those big conventions, they do take money. And if you're trying, like you say, if you're trying to remain competitive, you kind of you're encouraged to turn up at those big events because you saw well and good winning a six-person steamroller yesterday. But if I was wanting to get onto a WTC team, if I was looking to win an Iron Gauntlet or play at a big team event or get an invite to play at GWHQ and compete at the top table, you're going to have to winning, not winning multiple events to sort of get that notoriety. We found that with Guild Ball. We saw people. I used to travel a lot. I used to play events nearly every weekend. I also knew that there were some people that were competitive that travelled all around Europe, and they still did not get a qualification for some of the big events. They didn't win a national event, so they didn't get into it that way. So it can be a real cost, like say £400-500 for us in the UK. I'm sure in America, your petrol cost is going to be lower, but might be higher. Going to hotels and things.
I know. I think there was recently a podcast. I listened to it and it really killed me. I can't remember the name. Maybe Battle Driven. Maybe. God damn it! I'll put it in the description of the video.
Okay.
I know it wasn't. It was some American guys, and the guy who was speaking was Alex, and he's been to lots of WTCs. But he was saying when he was speaking to his guys, in America to travel the circuit, he was saying that he would consider it about $10,000 a year to do the American circuit, to be considered to be playing all the national events. So
Card games is just as much, if not more, because you're going to be attending a lot more frequently. You've got, you're going to internationals, you're trying to get World Players of the Year and all the rest of it. If you wanted to, it's not cheap to go and compete at multiple events. That's not something you have to do as a competitive player. You don't have to go to those big events. But if you are someone that has got that mindset and wants to, you've also got to take into account that you need to get food on the table. If you've got families, if you've got responsibilities and things like that. One thing I would say is I definitely wouldn't encourage anybody to go around playing in events and spending all their money and getting to debt, play a war game. It's great, it's fun, and I enjoy it. But just there's no point. Cut your cloth and make sure life is still enjoyable outside of it.
yeah, I've always sort of said, and I think this perspective has changed since I've maybe got older and life has happened. I think before it would matter a lot more to me if I won or lost the game, but all that matters is your spouse, she's healthy, he's healthy, your family are healthy. And even if you went and won, I don't know, let's think of the most prestigious event I could think of, say the 40k ITC scene, and then you get invited to the GW, you get a golden ticket, and you win, and you win that. Sick. When you go home, the people that matter to you aren't gonna give a fuck. If I told Lucy
Yeah,
I won the golden ticket at 140k, she'd be like, I don't care. And
I mean, yeah, that's not everyone because I met my wife. She fell in love with me, watching me win British Championships. She didn't have a clue what was happening, but she was like, "Oh, that is even sexier than I imagined." And as you can imagine, it was easy for her to get married to me after seeing that. Um, but yeah, I think you're right that while being competitive players, you want to win. Please, everyone that wants to be competitive, remember we are playing toy soldiers. We are playing in a hot room. Sometimes you're away from friends and family, and you can be with a lot of your friends. But miniatures gaming, like anything, is not your entire life. It shouldn't be. It's part of your identity. It's not your whole identity. So yeah, I think that's something that also makes a difference between players that are actually really good and the players that want to be hyper competitive and want to be that striving for those upper echelons, and they sometimes take it a bit too seriously.
yeah, I would also maybe like to be a bit of context that Lucy is very supportive of all my endeavours, and she's super enthusiastic about it. What I mean,
Yeah,
worded it poorly, but I think
yeah,
Maura
I
is
know what you mean.
saying,
No, I was making a joke.
yeah, I think Maura is saying that when you do win or don't win, it's not really the important things in life, so, and try and keep that into perspective. Right. So the last thing we'll talk about in terms of comp play, sorry, is chasing the meta in terms of cost. I think in some games it's higher, some games it's lower, but certainly if
Yeah,
you are trying to achieve the pinnacle of competitive gaming in a game, and you want to always be playing the most favored army, you're gonna have to be prepared to sort of shell out a bit, maybe on a
a lot of
six monthly cycle. I mean, for 40k, I know it's really intensive, the update cycle. But you're gonna have to,
it.
yeah, you go.
It's not just even that. It's the cost of it's the financial cost of um, getting that new army, that new model, that new faction. But also then if you're going to need to paint it, if you need to play with it, the time cost as well. If you're chasing the meta every 5 seconds, I don't think you're going to necessarily be as successful if you just stuck to one or two.
Yeah, fantastic. So we'll wrap up the comp chat there. We'll summarize it with a practice. Pick your faction, grind those reps, play on a shorter clock if you need to. Just get those games in. Mindset. Have a sort of think for yourself mindset, and try and avoid mentally tilting. Don't lose a game before you started, or lose a game on turn two because you rolled a five, not a seven. Try and play through all of your games, and and try and get it where you can. And then just be prepared if you. I think this is really good, geared towards trying to get onto a WTC team, but be aware that you're going to be expected to sort of do a bit of international traveling, national traveling, and that comes with quite a big cost, depending on where you are. Oz, say America, UK, it'll be different, but you're gonna have to be prepared to shell out some money to travel to those events. And in some systems, you might be required to chase the meta a bit. If you're trying to go to a WTC team, they might want you to play a army or a different army, and depends how regularly the game's updated. You might be asked to swap that army into something new because of the way the meta's looking. With all those four things, hopefully, they can help you to sort of stay competitive on the tabletop. Me and Dan have done quite well for ourselves, and we continue to do quite well for ourselves. So it sort of worked for us. And the next thing we're going to do is we are going to take a look at the Dice Down Gaming hobby section. We've not been able to do this for the last few times because we've had a few guests on, and I didn't want to force them to sort of stay on and look through this. But I always really like highlighting what we've sort of been doing in the hobby. So we're going to kick off with, I mean, this happens more often than not, which feels very self-gratuitous. But we're going to kick off with my stuff. So I recently sort of painted Stormjaw, which is a solo for War Machine, and I painted Boom Howler. All contrast. And they
Love it.
do they do the job. I really kind compliment someone saying, "Oh, I love your models," and what recipe do you use for your skin? I was like, Frostheart contrast paint is all I use. I mean, I
Yeah.
sometimes do apply it heavier in some areas and lighter in some areas, but if you just put contrast on troll skin, you're gonna be good. Steve says, anxiety holds me back. Meeting you lot has been amazing, but I can't shift the feeling of just being nervous in the run up to something.
I think that's completely fair. And I think um, something that is possibly a hangover from like the lockdown years and things like that is that getting back out into the world. But like anything, once you start doing it, once it, it feels scary the first couple of times, but once you start doing it, you feel more comfortable. I know when I first started playing events, I'd get smashed and I got felt really nervous before my first Steamroller, for example, or my first Flesh and Blood event, or whatever it might be. But just the more you do it, like everything, you feel more at home, you feel more yourself, and yeah, keep going, Steve, is my call for that,
Yeah.
including painting as well. I we both have said that we don't think we're pro painters in any way, shape, or form, but we want it to look nice. We're not, some people they enjoy competing for the painting side, but bit of contrast like you've got there. I really like your look, the whole army. I think it's really effective.
Thanks, mate. It certainly does the job. And yeah, in terms of anxiety, Steve, I would say, I'm quite fortunate. I've been through therapy and I've got some tools. But I certainly, recently I went to that London Steamroller and I travelled by myself. And even though I knew Den there, it was very much going into what I was told was a very competitive Shark Tank environment by myself. And I was quite nervous for it, and I think not because I wanted to win, but I always like to do well in terms of sort of representing myself as a player. I wouldn't like to go 0-3 because I lost, but I would like to always sort of try and do well because I feel like I put a lot of time into the game in terms of making lists and that, and I like to sort of at least have a sort of decent performance. So I was really anxious going there and thinking I'm just going to go 0-3 to these guys, which I've been told are real Shark Tanks, and look like a bit of an idiot. So I think everyone has that to a level, and anxiety is really tough. Like Dan said, I would say if you can, and it's easier said than done because I've often been told just not to worry, and that life would be really easy if I just couldn't worry. But try and push through. I find that the War Machine and really tabletop community often is really helpful when you need it. If you say and go to a tournament and they've got some sort of group event for it, if you wrote in there, "Hi guys, I'm coming, but I feel a bit nervous. I don't really know many people." I would hope that you would get a really positive response and sort of a warm welcome before you even turned up to the venue. Uh,
My first Guild Ball event, I can remember going to all the way to Norwich to play it. I had played 2 games of Guild Ball. I hadn't even got a mascot at that stage, and the night before I went and drove Sherman's and got a mascot. And yeah, went there. But beforehand, I put on the Facebook group. Really new. Looking forward to tomorrow. Anything I need to know. Anything sort of any any tips. It meant that I had a really warm welcome when I got there, and I think that's nice. People generally are actually nice. The internet might not be, but actually, generally in real life, people are going to be helpful, kind and considerate, and most communities want more people to join. So, I get the anxiety, get it, but if the more you communicate, I think, and also just being like, I'm a bit nervous, then people are going to give you more time. They can be more patient with you too.
yeah, I recently been speaking to Russ, the sculptor for Steamforge, and he's primarily like he's an amazing painter. He actually painted the Abyssal King
Yeah,
for the website, so that's his Abyssal King on it. But he primarily paints. And we've been talking sort of Brian Blood Dojo because he went to that big team event and he wanted to ask me like what list do you think would be sort of give him a chance of doing well. But he himself, he said, I'm not a competitive guy. And one thing that I was really surprised at, even though this was sort of, again, people were saying, oh, it's a big Shark Tank and everyone there is sort of like really good player. Everyone was really friendly. Everyone just, everyone had a great time. Everyone was there to have a social experience as well as, compete. And I think most competitive players, maybe 99%, are there also to have a good time as well. Steve said, it's not ever a bad experience. It's all been really good. I'll keep pushing, lad. Thanks. Steve, you're an excellent person.
yeah.
Outside of
You've been
tabletop,
great.
yeah, outside of tabletop, you're a lovely person to be around and have around. So wherever you go, you're going to be welcome, mate. Um,
Yeah.
Next up, we've got again me. This was my result of the Steamroller that I ran. I painted Firequill for Welsh Masters, probably, almost definitely, because I love playing him, and really, really enjoyed painting him. I would say though that there is so much fucking stuff on Brian Blood's models. There is like it's crazy.
I
Uh,
want 100 more barnacles on him, just for the fact that he has fortune.
I,
I
I,
think it's
will,
more
I will show you the
because
Abyssal King next time that we're together, because that must have about 100 barnacles on it without being joking. It's so many barnacles. So yeah, I'm
um,
really happy with how he came out actually.
then we've got Tom Draws doing some great photography.
So
Like really.
These are actually his own game. Tom is writing his own game system, and these are his first models for his own game, which is
awesome.
really, really cool. And I also like, yeah, I haven't really got any terrain at home to take really nice photos. I would love to get like a really decent terrain shot and take some decent art photos of the army, but I don't have any terrain.
It's cardboard terrain. Tom, draw things. Please let us know where that terrain's from, because that is really high quality. I'm guessing pre-printed cardboard terrain.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Not seen that before. I like it, like that quality. Also loving the pig.
Below that, we've got some models from. Dr. Ether is called Chris, so I'm going to call him Chris.
By the way, side note, can you hear "Hungry as the Wolf"?
Yeah, because I played the video.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, so I'll start now because if I play it for too long, YouTube will like tell me off for playing copyright music. But we've got some amazing gravediggers and some really cool sort of Frozen-esque terrain. Oh, I think I can't hear you, Dan. Yeah, for some reason you are muted. I can hear you. I can see you. I just can't hear you. Oh, I can hear. You're back again.
Any better?
Yeah, you're back again.
It's no. You can tell it's a dice down gaming video.
It doesn't. It's not a video if I can't hear you once. Below that one, we've got some old school Scorn, man. Yeah, some old school.
I could happily have them back in the game with the Mark IV.
Easy. That Fist of Halak, man. That was good times. Good times. And then below that, Chris has got some more of his gravediggers in a non-video format. I really like the grey. It looks like a Space Wolf grey, sort of.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah. Below that, Legendary Salt Titan with the big Shonka himself, Invictus, in a green-blue scheme. I
appreciate the amount of rivets and like nails and everything that he's put on there. Really
someone was painting the light warjack for Dusk, which is called a Spectre. They counted pretty much 100 rivets on that model.
I think on my Spectres I've coloured in every one of them. So I'm going to count later.
Yeah.
That's becoming my homework.
Chris, a really nice shot of his Kador with Boris and a couple of jacks. Really, really cool looking, and it fits the terrain.
The Brian Quinlax VFX. I'm loving the rust effect on those bloat trolls.
Yeah, they're sludge frowls, but they're basically bloat
trolls. That's it. Yeah.
They're basically
albino.
Right.
Albino fish next.
So good. It's so good. It's
the contrast with these. The pufferfish, that he's holding is amazing.
I also like it's almost like Sin City-esque style with like just blocked out colours. Yeah, really, really, really great. I'm pretty sure you missed the barnacle here, but we'll wrap it up there because it's been about an hour, but that's all good. It's been really great. I hope anyone who's sort of thinking about I would like to be competitive, or even if you don't, you're interested in what the competitive players sort of thinking or what they're doing to stay competitive. I hope you found it helpful. Had a bunch of people talking to us in the chat, and that's amazing. So thank you so much for sort of engaging with us. I'm not sure what the plan is for next week. I think I could do I cannot do next weekend. So there'll be no War Machine Weekly next weekend. But the week after that, we are going to have Chris Clare, who is head of the WTC for England. We're going to talk about gravediggers with Chris.
Nice.
Because he has been running them recently, which is really cool. And I don't really know much about them at all. So
yeah, I've yet to face them.
So we'll be absorbing all the information. And if you're looking or interested in gravediggers and sort of their tech, join us in a couple of weeks for that. So thank you everyone in chat. It's been really good. Thank you, Dan, for your time, and we